Today is Wednesday, November 7th. This is Paul Glumaz, Lyndon LaRouche's 44-year veteran. And today is November 7th, 2018. We are one day after the election yesterday. And it was quite an amazing result. And I'm going to try in the beginning to give you a sense of the significance of this election. I'm not upset with it. I think overall it was positive for the United States, relatively speaking, and potentially positive for the human race. The biggest losers, there were two huge losers in this state, in this election, two huge losers in this election, and one big loser that runs both of the two main losers. The first main losers were the Koch brothers. The second main losers was Soros. Soros is the major funder for all of the crap in the Democratic Party, and the Koch brothers are the primary funders of all the crap in the Republican Party. And we're talking, in the billions of dollars. We're not talking some, a chump change here. And their whole thing is to promote and ideologically, one is the neoliberal ideology, the other is the neoconservative ideology. The neoliberal ideology is an imperial ideology based on identity politics, green agenda, imposed on the world, free drugs for everybody, so that they can't think and they won't be a problem. And that's the George Soros crowd. And the other is the neoconservative view. If you can't make it in the world, then you just don't have the genes, and we don't want to help you. And that's just the way it is. That's God's way of taking care of the the successful are successful because they are successful. They have the genes, and the ones who aren't, screw them. That's the excuse me. I keep wanting to say something very ugly about them. The Koch brothers, and that's their viewpoint. And this is the radical, invisible hand, survival of the fittest. This is Dick Cheney. This is the neocons, and essentially, Trump was trapped between these two things. They had on one end, he was depending on the Republicans to survive. On the other hand, he was being assaulted by the Democrats who were trying to wipe him out. And then he was being assaulted by the Justice Department. But behind it all was the British. So right now, it is the British intelligence, it is the British offshore financial system, it's the British whole crowd that created, over a long period of time, both the neoconservative and the neoliberal movements that are right now not happy about the situation. Because of what happened. Now let me go into what actually happened. First of all, the Republicans who went with Trump did far better than the Republicans who would not go with Trump. That's the first thing. The second thing is that a lot of the Koch brother people, Paul Ryan, the Corkers, and others, they're gone. They're not coming back. Okay, the entire leadership of the Republican Party in the Senate and the Congress is going to shift, and is going to be more favorable to Trump. It's not going to be trying to hold Trump hostage. Now, a lot of conservatives are upset about this because they know that Trump has been a Democrat most of his life, and that he's sympathetic to an FDR orientation. They know that. But as long as the Democrats were on the jihad to impeach him, well, that's not a possibility. There's no one to work with. So the Soros operation through Obama and Hillary Clinton and all of that is designed to prevent a bipartisan development in the Congress, and so is the Koch brothers operation. It's to strangle the United States between these two controlling ideologies and systems, which are totally have no concept of the general welfare of the nation. One is totally off in one way, and the others are totally off in the other way. So now the situation is that the Senate will have something like three. The Republicans will pick up three senators, and that's very important because the Senate is what will be involved in foreign policy, making treaties, and also confirming new cabinet officials. So that's very significant. This is very significant for Trump, and the people in the Senate who are most anti-Trump are not necessarily going to be there. Okay? So that's very significant. The second thing is that the Democrats now have control of the House of Representatives. What are they going to do? Are they going to go into a resistance mode now against Trump? They have the majority. And in Trump's press conference, he made it very clear. If you want to play the game of investigation, it's a two-way street. We can play the game from the Senate. I can play the game from the Senate. You can play the game from the House. And nothing will get done. Now, Trump had a conversation with Nancy Pelosi, who is expected to be the speaker. And she and him had a conversation. And she came out, basically saying that she wanted to have a unity and a bipartisan orientation. And Trump tweeted that, that he congratulated her and he thought she earned the right to be the Speaker of the House, and that if people try to prevent her from being the Speaker of the House, he might encourage some Republicans to help make sure she gets to be the Speaker of the House. Now, none of this is for certain, but what you see is a Democratic Party that a Democratic Congress that if it wants to get things passed, they can go to Trump and work out a deal. And Trump can help them get it through the Senate. And what are the kind of things on health care? The whole health care thing has to be reorganized. The infrastructure plan. And other key things. And also the question of Glass-Steagall. If the financial system goes and you're going to need Glass-Steagall, you're not going to get it from the Republicans. You're going to get it from some Republicans, but it's going to tend to come from the Democrats. So Trump is in a position to work with the Democrats on those things that he agrees with, and he's able to carry to some degree the Republicans into that. So you have a very ripe situation for a bipartisan relationship. And that is not what the Soros or the Koch brothers or the British want. They do not want that kind of situation. This is very disturbing to them. Now, the bigger ramifications of this are international. The entire international community, China, Russia, Japan, were waiting to see what the results of the midterm elections are. And Trump made this clear, but it should be understood that they're waiting to see if Trump would be able to have a degree of capability to be able to act as president, to be able to work out agreements with China, with Russia, with India, with Japan, and so forth. And yes, the results of these elections have created a circumstance where it is quite likely that Donald Trump, as president, will have the kind of leeway to be able to do that. And he can come back to the Senate and say, look, these are the agreements we want. These are the trade agreements. This is what we want you to ratify. And these are the and so forth. So this is very, very significant. And so now the British are up to will start pulling some tricks. We know that. They'll trying to start this and that here and there. But if they do, they won't have the population on their side. Now, the other thing you have to understand about this election is that a lot of the Republicans who lost, who were up for election, a lot of them were not working with Trump. Those that were working with Trump, a lot more of them got reelected. So what does this mean? It means the following. It means that people voted for the individuals they wanted. There were a lot of Democrats that were pretty decent, and they were running against Republicans that the voters didn't really like, and vice versa. So people pretty much voted as they wanted. They were not tied, and it would be wrong to think that Donald Trump could carry the entire Republican Party, especially when a large part of the Republican Party was totally opposed to him, and a lot of the candidates, and a lot of the people hate Trump. I mean, a lot of these congressmen and senators, Republican congressmen and senators hate Trump. So I mean, this is a very good result overall. It means there won't be any impeachment. If someone tries to go there, they're not gonna. They're gonna be actually. It's gonna backfire. Now the British will try to stir things up. They'll try to create a hysteria around Trump. They'll try to get investigations going into this and that and start targeting. But that works two ways. And also it's political. And the population will respond politically to that. And the people who are initiating this are not going to be supported by the population. Rather, there'll be a backlash. So that's clear coming out of this election, that the people don't want any more of this crap, and increasingly so. And a poll was done on the Mueller investigation, and a lot more people than those who said no, the Mueller investigation should be ended. Now, you probably it'll be well known after you watch this, but Jeff Sessions was forced to resign today, right after this election. And it shouldn't surprise you. Trump made it indicated very clear that he was not happy with Sessions, but he also made it very clear that he wasn't going to do anything until after the midterms. Well, the midterms are over, and today Sessions is gone. Okay, this is very important to understand. Trump is not somebody he acts decisively. He just acted decisively. And of course the media is going absolutely berserk over this. And it's not the Democratic Party as much now as it is the media. And there was this press conference today where the media just, got really nasty with Trump, and one of the White House workers was shoved around. They wouldn't follow the quorum. It was so bad that Jim Acosta of the CNN has had his credentials removed. I mean, his behavior was so bad, and this situation is not a bad one. It's not a bad one at all. Now, it should not come as any surprise that George Soros is very unhappy. It was a lot of his NGOs are running these operations like the Caravan, and he's massively financing all the Democratic resist movement, which is the Obama crowd, and he's been coming under massive attack. And the New York Times last Thursday ran a huge article, opinion piece, defending George Soros as the great humanitarian. I mean, he's persona non grata in Hungary and in Czech and Russia and so forth. So he's a great humanitarian. But in the article, which is Soros's from the how Soros became a bad name from the fringe to the mainstream. How Soros is, and in this it was LaRouche was blamed. Lyndon LaRouche was blamed. The movement of LaRouche was blamed for creating this from the fringe. And they try to make out anybody that's against Soros as an anti-Semitic and so on and so forth. But this guy has done a lot of damage. You know, he's you know, tried to destroy entire countries through currency attacks, through fight, and then using the profits to fund color revolutions, chaos, mobs, and all of that. And the New York Times just, you know, thought he was the greatest thing, you know, in the world, and which tells you something about the New York Times. But they went after LaRouche, and that's very significant, because they do know that the policies are the policies of Lyndon LaRouche. They do know that the policies that China is now following with the Belt and Road is Lyndon LaRouche's policies. They do know that. And this is huge. And then the CBC in Canada radio, they took the article and then went all out against LaRouche. They just went berserk. And it shouldn't be an accident, because the woman who is the foreign minister of Canada, the foreign secretary, Chrystia Freeland, prior to deciding to run for parliament, she was going to write Soros's autobiography. She was going to do that. And that's how close the Canadian government is to George Soros. But George Soros is the empire. George Soros is the empire. And the Koch brothers are the neoconservative part of the empire, the funders, the bad people. These are the people that provide the money. And they both took a hit, big time, which means the British crowd took a hit. Now, Trump is saying that he reserves the right to declassify these materials. And any declassification, if he were to declassify all these materials, you would get at the root of the conspiracy to spy and frame up a candidate and run a coup against the candidate. And whether or not Trump will declassify, nonetheless, it all goes to the British. The British are at the center of the whole thing, and that could come out in the declassification, which definitely we would want. But not only that, but the door is now open in a way that it hasn't for a dialogue. How we deal with the economy, how we deal with the financial crisis, how do we deal with the trade questions. And it all is going to lead to eventually some kind of agreement, because the financial system is unworkable. It's all going to lead to some kind of agreement between the major nations for a new fixed exchange system, which is what LaRouche has been promoting for most of his life, and which actually Clinton was actually at one time considering as well. And that is the beginning of a new paradigm for humanity. That's the beginning of getting out of the geopolitics, of the permanent wars, of the military-industrial complex, of the maintaining control over a population through fear, through terror, and through conflict. That's how it's been run. And one way or another, whether you're afraid of the climate changing, or whether you're afraid of Russia and China, you know, it all boils down to fear. Fear is going to control the world, and terrorism is part of that. And that's the system we've been living under. That's the neoliberal and neoconservative system, which are really not fundamentally different in their conception of humanity. They're just different they're just different systems of control, different systems of controlling a population through an ideological structure. And that's what Trump is destroying. And in destroying that, he's creating the potential, or the potential is being created to bring the United States into a new system with Russia, China, India, Japan now. Japan is now much more openly collaborating with China in the Belt and Road. India is being brought in with Japan, with the help of Japan and Russia, to begin more and more closely working with with China. The new president of the new prime minister of Pakistan is now orienting in this way, and he's offered to mediate between Iran and Saudi Arabia. At the same time, you have the motion to end the war in Yemen by the end of November. And keep in mind that Trump will briefly meet with Putin this coming Sunday, the 11th, in Paris at the Armistice Day. But I believe the French president didn't want them to have a big meeting because it would upstage the French and the Armistice Day and all of that. But Putin and Trump are going to have their big meeting in Buenos Aires on the 30th at the G20 meeting, and Trump will also have a similar meeting with Xi Jinping. So we're coming into a series where nations are going to be meeting to deal with how they're going to deal with the financial collapse, how they're going to put an end to terrorism, how they're going to end these wars, and the question is, will Trump work out with Putin and China a new international security architecture in which all nations, every nation is protected? That would be great. And we can begin to dismantle the whole nuclear confrontation system. That would be great. And in that context also have a reform of the global financial structures so that we can actually accelerate the development, the trade and development. Now, something very big is now just concluding in Shanghai, which is the first Chinese international investment expo. This investment expo was huge. It had 3,600 exhibits of products. It had 196 nations and international organizations and represented there. It had 400,000 people registered to come and look and buyers, basically buyers. This is huge. What the Chinese are saying in this Shanghai Expo is, look, we're now going to increase our consumption. We're going to improve the life of the Chinese citizen, and we're going to have the citizens going to have access to all these products from all over the world. So here, why don't you come and try to work out a deal with whoever? So this is huge. And vice versa, people were working out deals to export from China, but mainly it's Chinese imports. So all these international people are coming in to talk to Chinese, not about Chinese exporting to them, but about them exporting to China. This is huge. And Trump endorsed it. So this whole trade situation, all of this isn't going to work until you have a financial structure architecture where nations are not held hostage by the Soroses of the world, the international hedge fund managers, the international financial speculators, by the City of London and Wall Street. They're not held hostage anymore. There's a fixed relationship among the currencies. But the issue of stopping, but nonetheless, we are still very close to a war. We're still very close to a nuclear war because it hasn't been called off. The previous policy that was leading in this direction is still in full force. Trump has not had a power to get rid of the people who are absolutely insane. People like Bolton, Pompeo is terrible. These had to rely on these people. He's not been in a position to appoint anyone that would actually represent his views in foreign or military policy. So maybe now with the Senate shifting, maybe now Trump can start to have some Secretary of State or some national security advisor who can represent him and the policies for which he was elected, which is an end to all these wars and economic development, a retransformation of the United States into a much more developed country, which is what he campaigned on, basically. I mean, that is what he campaigned on, and he's indicating that he has no intention of not trying to fulfill that intention. And the election that took place yesterday actually opens the door for that. It really does. And LaRouche, the LaRouche movement, myself, we have a big role to play, and so do you potentially. And so I encourage you at this point, now that this has happened, to contact me and or email me and get involved, because we are at that point where we can move, and with policies that actually will give us a future.